Don't forget, you can reach the latest episode of Potomac Watch anytime. Just ask your smart speaker, play the Opinion Potomac Watch podcast. That is, play the Opinion Potomac Watch podcast.
From the opinion pages of the Wall Street Journal, this is Potomac Watch.
Welcome back. I'm Paul Gigot with Kim Strassel here talking about the January 6th committee's final report. And another issue that the committee addressed is its referral to the House Ethics Committee against Republican members of Congress who the committee subpoenaed to appear before the committee to give testimony. And those Republicans declined to appear, including Kevin McCarthy, the minority leader, and Jim Jordan, who will run the Judiciary Committee in the new Congress. Let's listen to Zoe Lofgren, member of the committee, Democrat from California, making the case for why they did it.
We arrived at the conclusion that we should take the responsibility for enforcing against our own members. Now, maybe it's true. Maybe the members of the Ethics Committee who are Republican don't have honor. I've never said that, and we'll find out. But if they can't act, then I think we've got to really think about the whole Ethics Committee milieu, because we count on the Ethics Committee. And as I say, I did that when I chaired the committee. You have to call it as you see it, regardless of party. And if there's no action taken, then I guess members of Congress will accept subpoenas as a suggestion instead of a requirement.
Well, Kim,
Wow.
no honor,
Unbelievable.
I guess. I gather you think that her case is not persuasive.
Well, let's think about this. So you have a committee which the complaint against it is, yes, there were 2 Republicans on it, but it's a partisan committee because the Republicans that were on it had basically had real grievances with the Republican Party themselves. And they all along have suggested that they are doing honorable work. They decide in the name of their righteous work that they're doing that they're going to break all precedents and issue subpoenas to fellow members of Congress, which, by the way, never been done before. And we don't even know if it's allowed or legal, what the courts would say about something like this. The members resist. They decide to now forward this to the Ethics Committee. And Zoe Lofgren is suggesting that if the Republicans on that committee do not act at their partisan request to take up an ethics investigation against these people, that they have no honor. It's a little over the top, Paul. And look, you can make an argument whether or not some of these members of Congress, whether it would have been in everyone's interest to go and speak to the committee. But given that some of them, for instance, Jim Jordan, were ones that Nancy Pelosi refused to seat on the committee themselves. Kevin McCarthy is another one that was named and is on track potentially to become Speaker of the House. I think that they probably had good reason to believe that this committee wasn't conducting its proceedings in a fair or a balanced manner, and that nothing they said would be put to the good.
Yeah, and the precedent setting here is troubling because you could get into a situation where whichever party is in the majority is suddenly going to start subpoenaing Democratic members if it's the Republicans in power and vice versa. And I think institutionally it's corrosive. And as you say, hasn't been done before that we can recall. So it's a very troubling event. And again, one of these breaking of norms that is troubling and could have consequences in the future. I suspect the Ethics Committee will drop this. All right. Let's turn to a second topic, one of your favorites, Kim, the Omnibus bill. Congress goes out with a last-minute $1.65 billion spending bill. It'll fund the government through September 30, notwithstanding that Republicans in the House are going to take power on January 3rd, I think it is, the first week of January, where they would have had a chance to influence the priorities. But the Senate, the Republicans, decided to pass this. To negotiate with it. And Mitch McConnell, the minority leader in the Senate, also be minority leader next year, decided to negotiate. And he defended it this week, despite criticism, claiming a couple of things. One, big increase for defense, 9.7%, I think it is, year over year, and breaking the Democratic demand, traditional demand for parity between defense and domestic non-defense. He's claiming that this is a major victory and precedent-setting victory for the GOP. What do you think of that, Kim?
It was a major victory for all the spenders in Congress, which unfortunately, I guess, the Republicans in the Senate are these days. I mean, unbelievably, Paul, only 29 Republicans voted against this. This was an $1.8 trillion omnibus that was cooked up in a back room. Nobody got to see the contents of its more than 4,000 pages until 2 days before they passed it. They attached all manner of other legislation to it, stuff that they hadn't managed to get done over the year. There's bad policy in here. And I understand McConnell claiming victory on the military funding. It is very important that we increase our military funding. But what I really resented about the Republicans pushing this week was that they were telling falsehoods to the American people. They were saying there's really only two choices here. We either get this military funding and pass this whole ugly, terrible bill, or the military doesn't get its funding. Those were not the options. Okay, first of all, they could have had a fight. They could have said, look, both sides have already agreed. This is a bipartisan initiative that we are upping our military spending by this amount. And that was true. That had passed in both the House and the Senate. And so those are the things we agree on. But we do not agree with you, Democrats, on continued more money for domestic priorities, given you've already spent $4.5 trillion over the past 2 years. And so we're sticking there. You need to keep domestic levels flat. We'll pass an increase in the military budget. And if you don't like it, you can own a shutdown and you can take responsibility for the loss of military preparedness. But that involves having a spending fight. And Republicans didn't want to do that because they wanted their earmarks and they wanted their dollars. They also could have kicked this a couple of weeks to when the Republicans are running the House. Now, their argument was Kevin McCarthy can't even get his caucus organized, so he can't handle this. Well, maybe, I don't know, but at least it had to have been a better shot than what they just signed off on.
Well, and that last point is important, I think, because what it suggests is that not just a lack of confidence in McCarthy by the Republican senators, if they truly believe that McCarthy could have delivered anything. By the way, McCarthy may not even be Speaker.
Right?
It could be somebody else. But the point is that Republicans won the House promising the American public, and they won the popular vote for the House by, 2.5 percentage points? I can't remember where the last number was, but they won the majority of the popular vote and the majority of seats, however narrowly, on the pledge that they would restrain spending. And so we're saying Republicans in the Senate don't want to even give them that chance to see if they can do that and be able to use their leverage with the House majority to impose some of their priorities. I think if you're a Republican voter, you scratch your head and say, so why did we give them the majority? Why should we care?
You know, I think this is a good little anecdote, Paul. A couple of weeks ago, Mitch McConnell gave a farewell speech to Patrick Leahy, the longtime Democratic appropriator who is retiring this year. And I'm paraphrasing here, but he said, Leahy and I had our go-arounds, but we always understood that the enemy was not each other, it was the House. And the point being is that, as good appropriators in the Senate, this is a place where the money really always does get done. And over the years, it certainly has been conservative majorities in the House that have made efforts to restrain spending. But look, there are a lot of Republicans in the Senate that like this. And I would argue that it wasn't that they really believed that McCarthy couldn't deliver on this, but they saw one last opportunity to have a big hurrah, and they took it.
And one final note that compounds the felony, metaphorically speaking, the last-minute hijinks on Kabuki show on immigration. Mike Lee, Republican of Utah, threatened to scuttle the whole plan to go home and pass this before Christmas and go home, keep the senators there, unless they could vote on an amendment that he was offering that would have cut spending for the Department of Homeland Security if President Biden wouldn't extend Title 42, which is a pandemic-era authority to be able to deport illegal migrants coming over the border. Democrats scrambled. They opposed it, and it lost. They gave him the chance for the amendment, but they put together their own amendment with Kyrsten Sinema of Arizona, John Tester of Montana, both of whom happen to be running for re-election in 2024, to say, okay, we want to extend Title 42 as well, knowing full well that would lose. But it gets them on record as saying, see, I'm for Title 42 as well. Now we have problems with Title 42 ourselves at the Journal. because it is supposed to be related to the emergency in the pandemic, which is arguably over. But their amendment failed 87 to 10, as nearly all the Democrats voted against it, too. So it just shows you the cynicism at play here. Last word, Kim.
Yeah, it was a landing spot for a few Democrats to vote yes for us so they could say, yeah, look, see, here's my vote on the record showing that I want to do something about the border. And then they all turned around and voted down the one amendment that would have done something about the border. True cynicism in Washington, and lets you know some of the games that get played on a daily basis. And it's a real pity because we are about to have an even worse problem down in Southwest America.
All right, Congress demonstrating in its final week the truth of the Winston Churchill maxim, at least alleged that he had said, that democracy is the worst political system except for all of the others. We want to thank you all for listening here and wish everybody a Merry Christmas. We will see you next week after the Christmas holiday on Tuesday and talking about the end of the year and looking forward to 2023.